clear, I'm not going to recommend your first radio because I think it's really a personal decision based on what you want to do. And I don't think there's one perfect first radio for a ham as they get started. I do think that there are classes of radio that you want to get into. And this is why I said, and I've seen this advice given a lot of times, so I'm not the only one that says it, is get a decent radio and listen. The two things that I qualify as a decent radio is to start off with, unless you just want to be a listener for the most part, you may want to stay away from a Baofeng or a Woshan or whatever, inexpensive Chinese radio is out there right now. And I'm not saying it's a bad radio. What I'm saying is it's a difficult radio. It's not a first radio experience radio. It's very hard to program and understand all the things that go with it. And there are things that could go sideways if you're not programming it right. And similar things with SDRs. They're great to listen to, but they have different sensitivities. Each one can be a little finicky at times. They're nice in a lot of ways, but again, if you want to get involved in that big universe, the big universe is people that have ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, Motorola, radios of that group. Alinco is another fairly popular group of radios. So it reduces the frustration factor if you think about one of those radios because they're much better documented. They want people to come back and make sure they can use their radios. Not only that, but there's a whole subsystem of groups that help program those radios, whether it's freeware like Chirp or paidware like RT Systems. There's a universe out there that's really designed to support these radios in a lot of different ways. The third reason, and this is my personal reasoning, is when I get started, I want to make sure that the problem is me and not the radio. So if I bought a used radio from a guy and I'm not quite sure if it works, and hams are mostly trustworthy, but there's probably been one or two cases of somebody selling a radio that didn't work along the line. I wanted to make sure that whatever I bought and was trying to use was something that probably worked. And if there was a problem, it was a problem between the microphone in the chair or the keyboard in the chair or the key in the chair. And so that was my reason for starting off with something more commercial and something more popular, and then coming back around later on to, can I play with a Baofeng to make it work for APRS, or can I get a Motorola to do, an old commercial Motorola to do DMR? So no worries buying used. I just think it's a good idea to start with something popular. And that's my thinking on kind of getting into radios. Now, once you've got that lined up, my other question is, what are you into? Depending on what radio you want will really depend on what you're into. If you're into DX, you're not going to want to buy a Baofeng. That's not going to do anything for you. If you're into working satellites, there's some really specific radios that work really well for that. And getting a ICOM 5100 may not be the best for that. Great for D-Star. I'm not spending a lot of time using it to work satellites, but everybody's mileage may vary. So there's probably, again, an easy button way of finding a popular radio that's going to do what you want it to do. If you want to do digital, an ICOM 5100 is a great radio and a great place to get started on D-Star. If you want to do DMR, there are radios like, I want to say Tentec, but that's not right. There's a bunch of radios out there that are DMR ready.
TYT.
What's that?
TYT.
TYT, Titera, and a few others have some good radios that are really not in the $100 to $200 range for decent handhelds, so they're not really that expensive either. The second piece of advice that I go into on this is listening. And, it really helps a lot to sit down and hear what you're talking about before you jump in. So it's not always possible and plausible to do that, I'll admit, but it is definitely good operating practice to try and give it a bit of a listen first. And I think that goes not just for a repeater conversation where you may be in the middle of a net and you need to understand how the net control flow is going before you jump in. But if you're on HF and you're doing contesting, there is a definite flow to how you get in and send your call sign and give specific information and take specific information back. So if you sit and listen for a couple of minutes, you're going to pick up how that flow goes. You're also going to pick up how that, I'll just use HF as an example. You're going to pick up how that operator picks people out. So if he's calling CQ and going right away and picking up people, maybe he's got 4 or 5 people that are trying to get in at the same time that you can hear, but he's always taking the last one. So when you're trying to call him, you wait a tick or two after he says CQ before you try and call in so you can be that last one. Or he always picks the first one. Whichever way it goes, you want to try and play with that a little bit and understand that. So a bunch of good reasons why it's good to get a decent radio and listen. And